Hello! Back on the road up to the Lake District for another trip for the second consecutive weekend, which is really quite pleasant. On my last trip last weekend, the gusts were up to around 50 miles an hour, and it was quite wild in bits. The gusts over the next few days, I'm there for 4 nights, the gusts over the next few days are forecast to be up to 58 miles per hour, and then we have 2 days worth of yellow warnings for snow. Now, fingers crossed, I get snowed in and I can't drive anywhere and I'm just stuck. I've got enough food and alcohol to last me 4 days if I can't go out anywhere. So I'm kind of quite hoping I just get stuck there, because that would suit me down to the ground over New Year's Eve. But we'll see what happens. I'll catch up with you either on the way or when I get back up to Hillcroft Park. Back in the Lake District, back at Hillcroft Park, back in pod CP17. When I left home, the weather was actually quite pleasant, quite breezy, but lots of sunshine around, lots of blue sky, and the Lake District has done its typical little trick. It's just throwing it down. But that's fine. I don't care, because I'm going to be in here in the warmth, out of the way of it all. And I'm very much looking forward to 4 days of that view doing very little. I will get out at some point, absolutely will definitely get out at some point on the kayak. I didn't do on my last trip, and even if it's rough, I'll just get out just for some fun. But for now, I'm going to get moved into the pod. I'm going to sit and enjoy this view, maybe get a beer up and catch up with you in a bit. I love just sitting here when the site's this quiet. I've never been here over New Year's, but I have been at this site quite a lot in through December, either in the pods elsewhere on the site or camping. I am stupid enough to bring a tent up here in December. I'm stupid enough to do a lot of stupid things, but you'll figure that out in time. Yeah, it's just very, very, very quiet and very peaceful. And sitting here with that view, as I said in my last video, it's just wonderful. And I think this trip is going to be pretty much like the last one. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to pull a video out of it. Yeah, I think I'm just going to do a whole lot of relaxing. 2025 is looking good. It's looking busy. It's looking like it's going to have a few new challenges. And I'm very much looking forward to it. It's been a very rough 2024. In fact, it's been a very rough last few years, which I'm not going to go into now, but I probably will at some point. And sort of explain the reasons why I've decided to do this channel and have something else to get my teeth into. But that is something for another time. Again, maybe later on this evening when I've opened the wine. But I think for now, I'm just going to sit here and relax and enjoy this view and do very, very little. Catch up with you in a bit. Well, I thought the weather last week was bad. It's even worse this week. It's very windy, very wet. Much more rain than there was last week. Didn't really do anything last night. I just sat in the pod and relaxed, so there wasn't really any point in filming anything. I'm going to go for a little drive and see what kind of a state the lake's in. I suspect it's going to be quite wild down there, because it's quite wild up here, and just looking down to the lake from here, I can see bits of white water in the middle of the lake, which would suggest it's quite lively down there. So we'll go for a wander and see what we can find. I've changed to the big helmet for 2 reasons. One, I'm taking no chances whatsoever with slipping and smacking my head on sharp rocks down here, because that would not be good. I can already feel how slippy it is. And B, it's really good for hiding away from the raining and the wind and the horribleness. Yeah, it's quite lively out there.
the water level's a little bit lower than it was last week. In fact, it's quite a bit lower, which is surprising. But that is quite lively. I can't really even see across to the fells. Well, kind of a little bit, but you can see there's an awful lot of rain and mist and stuff blowing its way up. It's also very, very cold. Yeah, let's get back in the warmth.
I'm looking a bit wet. So yeah, it's pretty wild up here. I've never seen Ullswater as rough as that. I was thinking about getting the kayak out, but I'm not going anywhere near it. But I can do whatever the hell it wants out there, because I've got 2.5 boxes of 19 Crimes, 6 beers and a bottle of port left. So quiet, warm, cosy night in here, I think. It's 2025. I'm not quite sure how that happened. I mean, fundamentally, I understand it. This whole planet goes around the sun every 365 days and all that malarkey. I just don't know how. I don't know where the last 43 years have gone, basically. So New Year's Day, 1st of January 2025. It's been a super chilled out last few days. I've done basically nothing, so hence not filming anything really. The weather over the last 2 days, in fact, has been the worst I've ever seen in the Lake District. It's been absolutely crazy. Rain, heavy rain, constantly. Absolutely constantly, which I've never really known. It hasn't let up for the last 2 days. Today has been the most settled weather I've seen up here in, well, even on my last trip last weekend, the weather was similar, apart from that last day where the wind dropped down, but it was still wet and rainy. For the moment, it looks quite pleasant out there. It's still a bit windy, but it's not raining at least. More rain is forecast today from maybe sort of 11, 12 o'clock onwards. And then tomorrow looks set to be stunning. So I'm hoping to get over to maybe Buttermere and walk a lap of Buttermere, because that's stunning. It's absolutely gorgeous. And those clean, crisp, clear winter days are just some of my favourite days to be out with a camera and be out walking generally. So hopefully I'll do something like that tomorrow. I think now I'm just going to have a wander down into the village, just have a little stroll around with, I'm going to take the R6 Mark II, and I'm going to take this old beast of a thing as well, which I'm sure most people will be familiar with. The old Canon 5D Classic, the Mark I. So my first sort of proper camera, which I bought back in 2011, I think, was the 5D Mark II. I went from that to the 5D Mark IV, and then eventually to the R6 Mark II. So the 5D line is a line I'm super familiar with. I missed out the Mark III because there wasn't enough of a difference between the Mark II and the Mark III for me personally to warrant the expense of changing. But by the time we went to the Mark IV, there were huge improvements in dynamic range, a reasonably useful bump in resolution up to 30 megapixels, and a much more advanced autofocus system. And of course, the live view was much more advanced with dual pixel autofocus. So it made sense to finally, after running the Mark II for so many years, for 8 years I ran that camera as my main camera, it finally made sense to go to the Mark IV. The main reason I changed to the mirrorless system is actually for access to the lenses. There are a whole host of really quite interesting lenses in the RF range that aren't that expensive for what they are. Lenses like the 100 to 400. Now, admittedly, it's f7.1 f8 at 400mm, but realistically, that's not too much of a problem with how well the camera performs at high ISO. You can very easily make up for that. And the 100 to 500 is only, I think it might be a third of a stop less at 500mm on aperture. So realistically, there's not a huge amount in it. The optical quality of the 100 to 400 is so good that unless I needed the weather sealing, I can't really justify another 2,000 quid on the 100 to 500L. So yeah, So the lens choice was really the main reason I moved into the RF system. But also, having done that, the way the autofocus system works is actually a game changer for things like, particularly things like wildlife. The ability to turn on subject tracking and have the little box appear on the eye of a robin that's, you know, can be sort of that big in a frame this big, and it will still go straight to it. It's an absolute game changer. So I love the R6 Mark II. It's a beast of a camera, and it's been really fun getting to grips with the video from it as well, because that looks stunning as well. Even though I don't know what I'm doing with it yet, but it's obvious that it's a very, very, very capable tool. My other most used camera is the 5D Classic, which I picked up about 2 years ago, having heard loads about sort of there's people saying it's a camera that does its own thing, and having used one now for a couple of years, that's absolutely true. It just has a look that no other camera I've ever owned has had. I think the closest that I've ever come to it was probably the 1DS Mark II, which was a couple of years older, but a similar kind of generation, similar generation of sensor technology. And that had a similar thing, but the 5D Classic does just have a look. And I'm not sure why that is, but I suspect it's actually because of its technical limitations. So the R6 Mark II has a dynamic range of something like 14.7 stops. You can essentially shoot anything with it and it'll just go, yeah, all right then, whatever. Which is great. You know, it's nice to be able to have the confidence that you can pull something out of the raw files, even in challenging situations. But there's something about how the 5D Classic, with its dynamic range that is probably more like 11 stops, I would imagine, being the generation of camera that it is, there's something in the way it crushes highlights, it loses detail in certain parts, but it does it in a very, I don't really like to say filmic way. I mean, I love film, but I think digital and analog as technologies, if you like, as concepts, as things, are just too different to compare in those terms. But there's something very gentle and very natural and very pleasing about how the 5D Classic renders images. So that is actually my other most used camera, with this absolute beast, which is the R6 Mark II, and then this ancient 20-year-old dinosaur of the 5D Classic. But I use them in different ways, I use them for different things, and there are just times when the 5D Classic feels right. Yeah, I was in San Francisco a month ago, and I had the 5D Classic and the R6 Mark II with me, and I actually spent most of the time shooting on the 5D Classic because it just felt right. There was something about how it rendered those scenes of walking around the cities of the street. Cities of the street? Streets of the city. That felt better and more natural somehow than the R6 Mark II. And it's something you don't really even need to overthink. You just, you know, you don't need to be able to analyze the reasons why, even though I've kind of tried in the weird way my brain works. But you don't really need to analyze the reasons why these two cameras do things differently. You just need to go with whatever feels right. I think today I'm going to have a little wander into the village, and for the conditions, the 5D Classic kind of feels right. So I only have one EF lens with me, which is the 40mm f2.8 STM pancake lens, which I absolutely love. That lens is so much bang for the buck. It's so sharp. I mean, it's a very simple lens optically. There's nothing really in it. It's tiny, it's light, and it's a really nice general focal length on a full frame camera. So I'm going to get my stuff together. I'm going to go for a little wander. I'm not sure how much I'll film. I might try and get some bits of video on the R6 Mark II as I'm wandering around. But otherwise, I'll catch up with you in a bit. Just had a wander down into the village, and the conditions have cleared up quite a lot. Still windy and wet, although it's not throwing it down at the moment, which does make a nice change. So I'm going to go and get the kayak out and see what it's like in the middle of the lake. I'm going to get my dry suit on here because it's much easier to do it here than at the side of the road. And I'll see you down at Ullswater. So I'm down at the side of the lake. It's what we were saying yesterday about the water level being much lower than it was the week before. It's right back up there again. There's some around there. There's a line of quite big boulders, and they were perfectly visible yesterday. Completely submerged today. It's a little bit awkward for getting the kayak out because the skegs underneath the kayak will catch them, so I might try and head out that way. But yeah, it just goes to show how quickly conditions can change here. The weather's just absolutely puzzling at the moment. I've never known anything like it. It's 10 to 7 in the evening, and the last 2 days the weather's been as bad as I've ever known it up here. It's been absolutely hideous. Today out on the lake it was quite lively. Still a lot of wind, quite a lot of rain, but now the weather could not be more different. So we have a red alert for Aurora at the moment. The alert was quite a lot stronger earlier and it's dropped off a little bit now, but it is still red, which means basically something out there is happening. Probably not going to see that very well, but I've just got the R6 Mark II out here on the tripod, just hoping to see something happening up there. I've had a drink, unfortunately. Well, I say unfortunately. Which means I can't jump in the car and drive anywhere. So if I do see stuff happening in the sky, I might have to just make a dash for the lakeside with a camera and see what I can get. But yeah, what an astonishing change in the weather. Not a breath of wind and crystal clear skies. Have actually managed to get some activity, which is pretty awesome. What a morning. It is an incredible morning in the Lake District. It is stunning out there, but bitterly cold. I've just had the car running for about 10 minutes. It took me about 5 minutes just to get the driver's door open. All 5 doors had frozen solid shut, and the back 2 doors still are frozen solid shut. I wanted to get out on the lake on the kayak because it just looks incredible. But the car's frozen shut, so I'm going to have to delay that. I'm just going to leave it and let the sun come up, and hopefully it'll warm it up enough just to melt the doors open. So I think I'm just going to go for a little walk up the hill for now. It's only 10 AM, so plenty of time. I'm just looking out. After sitting here over the last 2 weekends at horrendous weather, it's so nice just seeing blue skies and sunshine. So let's get out for a walk, see what we can find. This is just mad. This is absolutely mad. From the conditions 2 days ago, which were the worst I've ever seen up here, it's just stunning. It is absolutely stunning. I've been an idiot and forgotten my mic, so there's going to be some wind noise, unfortunately. But I'm just out in the fells, just to the east of Pooley Bridge, not far from Cockpit Stone Circle. It's just breathtaking. Absolutely beautiful. Well, I figured I may as well end this video down here on the shore of the beautiful Ullswater. Looking far more calm and serene than it did 4 days ago. I don't know how much of a video this is going to be. I've filmed very little, and the reason for that is I've done very little. I've basically done what I was talking about in the last video of sitting and just taking my foot off the accelerator and doing not a lot, which has been lovely. It's a geeky little thing. Perfect little mounting spot for my mic on my life jacket. How cool is that? It amused me anyway. We've got heavy snow forecast for the next few days. I'm going to try and make it home before all that hits, which fingers crossed I will do. I don't mind getting snowed in at home, but I do not want to be travelling through it. So, I'll catch you on the next one.